Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are doing a deck tech for Zurgo Stormrender. Zurgo is a Mardu 3/3 legendary orc warrior with Mobilize 1 and mobilizes whenever this creature attacks, create a tapped and attacking 1/1 red warrior creature token that you have to sack at the beginning of the next end step. But he says whenever a creature token you control leaves the battlefield, draw a card if it was attacking, otherwise each opponent loses 1 life. So this is just Zurgo's Mardu Aristocrats. So why play Zurgo? Because he's a 3-mana 3/3 Aristocrat from the zone. That's such a big deal. The whole point of Aristocrats, for those of you who are not aware of the archetype, Aristocrats is the idea of killing off your own creatures to gain the benefit from other creatures. So for example, Zurgo is an aristocrat because whenever you kill off one of your creatures, it makes each opponent lose 1 life. So the idea is we make a lot of token creatures, or we loop our creatures from the graveyard, we keep playing them and killing them to passively drain out our opponents, or we get some benefit from it. So the fact that we just have an aristocrat in the command zone is very, very good. He enables himself with Mobilize. Just when we attack, we're going to make a 1/1 token anyway, which is really nice because it either, when it attacks, it's either going to, just in a vacuum, go into die, and then we're going to draw a card, which people probably don't want to do, or we're going to have to just, I guess that token wouldn't be not attacking, so any other token we have would just make each opponent lose 1 life, which is really, really good. He pings each opponent, which is a really, really big deal. Some of the better aristocrat pieces, sometimes they hit target opponents, but the fact that he pings each opponent is really good. And he draws cards just constantly. He has good, fun combat sacrifices. If we swing out with a team of people, and then we go, oh yeah, actually, like, I wanna draw cards instead of like draining, and we still are gonna have a ton of other drain effects too. So really cool dude. Here's the game plan. We don't need him to win, right? Great guy, but we're still aristocrats. Like, he is just another aristocrat that we would keep in the command zone. Early game, we want to get down our small dudes. We want to start making tokens. We want to start just getting set up for these big plays. We want to get our sack outlets out. Mid game, we want to play Zurgo, really just for card draw. We want to play him. I mean, he's good as the aristocrat piece, but the idea is we play Zurgo turn like 3 even. We attack with like a 1/1 we made on turn 2, and then that dies, we'll draw cards and then either replace itself or whatever. And then late game, we're going to win by burning out and draining all of our opponents just by killing our own creatures, and sometimes by swinging with them. Channel and deck stuff. The deck is like $5.50 at the making of the video. Take it with a grain of salt because it's saying Zurgo is like $25. He's just a commander, he's not going to be that much. But get the cards you need from the link down below, and as always, remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. So going into it, the only other new card we have in this deck is Elspeth Storm Slayer. So I do want to preface saying right now, I made this deck list yesterday. I saw that Zurgo got spoiled, and I liked him so much, I wanted to make a deck list for him as soon as possible. So these are the only 2 cards that we have spoiled for Tarkir so far. But going into it, Elspeth is Anointed Procession on a Planeswalker. If you would make 1 or more tokens, create twice that many. So her +1 functionally reads +1, create 2 1/1s, 0, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain flying, which is a great combat trick to just kill people. And then we can destroy target creature an opponent controls with mana value 3 or greater, which is also really good because she's a kill spell. We make 2 1/1s, or she's a great buff to our whole team and makes them evasive. So good. Again, but the whole idea of the deck, right, is we want to make a lot of tokens, or we want to loop our own guys, because if we're making 2, let's imagine like we have and we'll talk about it later. Elspeth, Sun's Champion, create 3 1/1 soldiers, which is, she's so good for that. And again, imagine if we have Storm Slayer, then we're just getting 6 1/1s. Destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. We do not have that many big creatures. Like, we just straight up don't have that many big creatures. We're not going to alter. We probably don't want to alter. We probably just want to just keep making 1/1s. But, I mean, if we do choose to alter, like, that's almost always a game-ending kind of deal. Going into creatures, we have Adeline Resplendent Cathar. Vigilance power equal number of creatures we control. So she's at worst always a 1/4. And then whenever you attack, for each opponent, create a 1/1 white human creature token that's tapped and attacking that planeswalker or player, right? So that's kind of the whole point of this deck, right? Is half of our guys make tokens and half of our guys deal damage when these creatures come into play or leave play or do whatever, right? So let's talk about Adeline because she's really good. Adeline is whenever you attack, not attack with her, just whenever we attack, she makes a 1/1 white human creature token, tapped and attacking. Imagine if we have a gate or agate instigator on the field. Whenever another creature enters, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. So if we have 3 opponents and we attack, let's say we play agate instigator turn 2, Adeline turn 3, right? We swing, we make 3 1/1s tapped and attacking. Each opponent now takes 3 damage off Agate Instigator on top of the attack damage. And Agate Instigator is really great because he has Offspring, and now you can have 2 Agate Instigators, so whenever a creature comes into play, each opponent takes 2. Alesha, who laughs at fate, is super good. First strike, put a 1/1 counter on her when she attacks, and assuming we attacked, return target creature with mana value less than or equal to her power from your graveyard straight to the battlefield. I'll tell you guys, we do not have a very high CMC in this deck. We're running like 34 lands because of it. So she's almost always hard reanimating just dudes from our grave to the field. Anim Packle is super sick. Whenever you attack, again, just I guess with 1 or more non-gnome creatures, we don't have any gnomes in this deck, I don't believe. But whenever we attack, right, we put a 1/1 counter on her, and then we're going to make that many 1/1 gnomes where X is the amount of counters on her. So we're going to go to combat. We play, I don't know, say we have whatever guy turn 1 or turn 2. We play Anim turn 3. We attack with that one guy. Anim gets a counter on it. And now we make a 1/1 tapped and attacking gnome. And then next turn we get 2 tapped and attacking gnomes. And then we get 3 tapped and attacking gnomes. She's just like gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's assuming we're not adding any more counters on her any other way, say with Elspeth. Blood Artist is super good. Whenever it or another creature dies, she's going to drain target player for 1 life, and we gain 1 life. So again, these gnomes from Anim, these soldiers, they're not staying around. We're not winning off them. We're winning off cards like Blood Artist that where we're going to kill our own creatures to drain out our opponents, or play creatures to burn them out with Agate Instigator. Body Launder is such a cool card, and I think a very underrated card. Death Touch, whenever another non-token creature you control dies, Body Launder connives, which basically means draw a card and discard a card. And if you discard a non-land card, you put a counter on him. And then whenever he dies, return another target non-rogue creature with lesser power from your graveyard to the battlefield. We don't have a lot of very high-powered creatures. It's mostly 2 and under. So Body Launcher is almost a hard reanimate, even if he dies instantly when he comes into play. Caesar's Legion Emperor, probably the best Aristocrat commander, but he is just so good even in the 99. Whenever we attack, we may sacrifice another creature. When we do, choose 2. Let's talk about this for a second, right? Let's say we have Zurgo on turn 3 and we have Caesar on turn 4. We attack with Zurgo, right? Zurgo has his mobilize trigger, and the attack trigger of Caesar also goes on the stack. What we're going to do is we're going to add Zurgo's token trigger, right, happening first. So Zurgo's trigger resolves. We make a 1/1, right? Then Caesar's trigger resolves. We're going to sacrifice that 1/1, and since that token was tapped and attacking, we're going to draw a card from Zurgo. Then we're going to choose 2 from Caesar. We are probably going to make 2 more attacking soldiers, and we're going to do the bottom effect of deals damage equal to the number of creature tokens we control to target opponent, which is just going to absolutely laser someone. We don't really need the card draw because Zurgo does it so well anyways. And we could always do it. I guess it depends on the situation, but I feel like almost always we're making 2 1/1s to replace the one we sacrificed, and we're lasering an opponent for a lot of damage. Charismatic Conqueror is very good. Our opponents are basically given the choice, right? Whenever an artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped under their control, they may tap that permanent, and if they don't, we make a 1/1 creature token with lifelink. So either all of their creatures are entering tapped and we're able to swing out with our tokens, which is great because they're not going to block, or they're entering untapped and we make more tokens that we can then sacrifice and drain or whatever. Corpse Knight, whenever another creature you control enters, each opponent loses 1 life. Again, let's say imagine our opponent, makes 3 creature tokens and they want them all to be untapped. It's like, great. We're making 3 1/1s off Charismatic Conqueror, and Corpse Knight is draining each opponent for 3, which is really, really good. Cruel Celebrant, whenever it or another planeswalker or creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. So she's the kind of card where we just want to start sacrificing our own creatures and start draining out each of our opponents. Doom Traveler is really good because he replaces himself, and we have a lot of cards like this. Doom Traveler, whenever he dies, make a 1/1 spirit with flying. So 1 mana, he's 1/1. We're going to kill him in some capacity, get the benefit from killing him in that capacity. He's going to replace himself with a 1/1 spirit, and then we'll probably do the same. Now, Drivnod is really good because if a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So Doom Traveler with Drivnod would now say, when he dies, you create a 1/1 spirit, and then we do that twice. So functionally, we're making 2 1/1 spirits. So really replacing himself. And then Drivnod also lets us exile 3 creature cards from our graveyards to put an indestructible counter on him for a humble 4 life. Also, he's an 8/3. I don't know. He's an 8/3. I like it, but 8/3 is weird. Eliasel Core, Sadistic Pilgrim, Death Touch, Great Blocker. Whenever another creature enters, we gain a life. Great. Whenever another creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Super good aristocrat, right? We're gaining a lot of life. Each opponent is losing a lot of life. Alenda of the Dusk Rose is very explosive. 4 mana, 1/1 lifelink, terrible rate. But whenever another creature dies, put a 1/1 counter on her. Not whenever another creature we control dies, just whenever any other creature dies, put a 1/1 on her. And then when she dies, create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is her power. So if we're on our turn, right, and we're like, you know what, we're going to kill 10 creatures, or we're going to kill 9 creatures, right? Let's say we have Ilias Core. Great. Each opponent now just lost 9 life from just us killing our tokens. Alenda is now going to be a 10/10. We can then kill Alenda, and then Alenda is going to replace herself with 10 1/1s. Elias Core will now gain us 10 more life. And then if we kill them all off, each of our opponents are going to lose another 10 life. So just kind of like a cool thing. She's like a ticking time bomb, basically. Garna, Bloodfist of Keld is just kind of like Zurgo. Whenever another creature you control dies, draw a card if it was attacking. Otherwise, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. It's literally just Zurgo, really. But it hits all creatures, and it also hits all opponents, so very good too. Hallowed Spirit Keeper, Vigilance. Whenever he dies, create X 1/1 spirit creature tokens with flying, where X is the number of creature cards in our graveyard. So, ideally, right? So if we kill him by himself, he's just going to replace himself with a 1/1, which isn't that great. But if it's like late game, or like we've been really heavy killing off our own creatures, like we're going to kill him, and then he's going to replace himself with, like, I don't know, let's say easy 5 dudes as a bad scenario. But that's still really good, like trading 1 guy for now 5 more, especially when we have a lot of ETB triggers that drain, or kill things that drain, or whatever. Combo, super cool. If our opponents would make a token, we get a copy of that token, but only once. And whenever we make 1 or more tokens, each opponent loses 1 life. Now, the big deal with Combo is something that's worth noting. Whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. That doesn't count for each instance of those tokens, right? So, Hallowed Spirit Keeper, right? All of those tokens enter simultaneously. So, since that's all counted on the whenever you make 1 or more, that only triggers once, right? So, Karmic Guide's super cool. It has Echo. Whenever Flying Pro Black, Echo 5, which we're probably not going to pay. Whenever it enters, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is like kind of good when we have like reanimation abilities, say Phyrexian Arena off the top of my head, where we can have Karmic Guide whip out back like Hallowed Spirit Keeper, and then Hallowed Spirit Keeper comes in and we can kill him and we make a ton of more tokens, and then Cobble drains, and it's all really good. Luminous Broodmoth. Whenever a creature you control without flying dies, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a flying counter. Now that card's super good because it basically gives us 2-for-1s on all of our death triggers, which is very, very good. Marionette Apprentice, Fabricate. Fabricate, we're probably just making the servo almost every single time. Whenever another creature artifact is put into your graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life, which is very good because, again, we want to kill off all of our creatures, and we want each of our opponents to lose 1 life per. And really, the servo, we're just bringing down a friend, which is really good. Mayhem Devil. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, deals 1 damage to any target. This is honestly like a mistake of a Magic card. I don't think they knew how good this was when they printed it. But either way, right, we sacrifice a lot of our creatures. We do this frequently. So we basically just have kills wherever we need. We need to kill problematic creatures or planeswalkers. Cool, they're gone. We just want to shoot face. Cool. Mirkwood bats. Whenever you would create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses 1 life. And again, we make a lot of tokens in this deck, so that's a lot of life lost. And when they sacrifice them too, so all of our tokens are now 2 for 1-ing. Mondrak, if we would make 1 or more tokens, create twice that many tokens instead, which is really good. So think of like cards like Mirkwood Bats, we're now doubling up that ability. And then we can pay 1 mana and 4 life to sacrifice 2 other artifact or creatures we control to put an indestructible counter on Mondrak, which is also really, really good because that's a sack outlet right away. Morbid Opportunist, whenever 1 or more creatures die, we may draw a card, but it only happens once each turn, so we want to make sure that we're always having like a token or 2 stand behind just so we can kill it on someone else's turn to draw a card. Pawn of Ulamog is so good. Whenever he or another non-token creature you control dies, you make an Eldrazi spawn, a 0/1 spawn that has the whole, sacrifice it for a colorless, which is really good because it makes all of our non-tokens replace themselves, really for a 2 for 1. Pitiless Plunder is, again, another mistake of a card. Whenever another creature you control dies, create a treasure token, which is really, really good. Imagine we have cards like Mondrak or Anointed Procession or New Elspeth where we have token doublers, right? Now we're making 2 tokens for every token that we kill, we're making 2 treasures. And if we use those treasures to make another token, we're actually getting 2 tokens, so it can go really crazy. Priest of Felrites. I love Priest of Felrites. Pay 3 life and tap it, sacrifice it to return a creature from our graveyard to the battlefield only as a sorcery. We can unearth it, but the cool thing is we're never going to unearth it unless we're like either ready to win the game or we're about to lose the game. Because what we want to do is we want to keep looping Priest of Felrites to get back our creatures over and over and over again. So we always just have recursion if things go away. Porphyros, God of the Forge, has the whole God thing, indestructible, devotion to red. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, deals 2 damage to each opponent, which is very, very cool. And then also, we can pay 3 mana to have creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Now, honestly, guys, we're not looking to win through combat damage, but people forget Porphyros has this ability a lot. And if we're making a lot of dudes, like, paying 3 mana to give like our entire board +1/+0 is really good as a combat trick. Revelark, whenever it leaves the battlefield, return up to 2 target creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, right? It has Evoke, which means it comes into play and then it leaves play immediately, right? For 6 mana, if we want that ability to happen right away. But since we're an Aristocrat deck, we really don't need that to happen because we have a bunch of sack outlets, so we can just play Revelark for 5, have it enter, kill it, gain a benefit from whatever sack outlet we just used, and then we get the reanimation. Sanguinary Priest, whenever another creature you control dies, it deals 1 damage to any target, but he has lifelink, right? So whenever a creature dies, he's shooting anything for 1, and since he has lifelink, we're gaining 1. He's such a cool design. Taste of Karlov, same idea of Drivnod. If a creature dying, you do it again. And then it makes all of our creature tokens have vigilance and lifelink, so we can kind of swing out if we don't really want to worry about the burn damage from Zurgo. But giving them vigilance and lifelink is pretty good to make sure that we're staying in the game for a good long time. Vein Ripper is insane. Flying ward, sack a creature, so like even if you try to kill him, his ability happens. Whenever a creature dies, any creature dies, target opponent loses 2 life and we gain 2 life. So good. Again, imagine like we're killing like 5 creatures. That's 20 points of life. We're gaining 10, they're losing 10. Fantastic. Viscera Seer, very cheap sack outlet, sack a creature, scry 1. We're staying on target. Warren Soul Trader, pay a life, sacrifice another creature to make a treasure token. The life can be bad, but honestly, since most of the Aristocrat pieces gain us life, it's not that big of a deal. Wriggling Grub dies, create 2 1/1 black and green worm creature tokens. So again, the idea is like, let's say we have Wriggling Grub, right? And we pay him for 2 mana, and then we kill him, let's say Warren Soul Trader. We make a treasure token, he replaces himself out, we get 2 more worms, we then sacrifice them, we get 2 more treasure tokens, so ultimately we got 1 more mana out of this whole exchange, on top of all of the like drain effects and burn effects we have. Yogg, so good. Pro humans, he hates them. Pay a life, sacrifice another creature to put a -1/-1 counter on up to another target creature. and draw a card, right? So good. It almost always kills a creature, or at least like makes small creature. We're killing our creatures all the time, so he's a great sack outlet. And then if we want to pay black, we can discard a card to proliferate. We probably don't want to do that. I mean, we have 2 Planeswalkers. We could ult him, but I mean, we're probably not doing that. He's just so good because he draws us so many cards, and he kills off our opponent's creatures, and he's a sack outlet. Our final creature, we have Zulaport Cutthroat. Whenever he or another creature dies, each opponent gets drained, which is really, really good because, again, that's the whole point of our deck. Going into our only sorcery, we have Raise the Past. Return all creature cards with mana value 2 or less from our grave to the battlefield. That's most of our creatures. I think this deck has like 36 or 37 creatures. We're very, very creature heavy, and this hits almost all of them. I would say this hits at least 80% of the creatures. So if we're sacrificing all of our creatures, like we can just pay 4 mana to get everything back, nice and easy. The only 2 instants we're running are Ink Shield and Secure the Waste. Ink Shield is prevent all combat damage that will be dealt to you this turn. For each 1 damage prevented this way, make a 2/1 black Inkling creature token with flying, black and white, which is really, really nice because if someone has like a big attack on us, we're just making a ton of like 2/1s. Honestly, even if an opponent is like, I'm gonna hit you for like 5, we're like, we could whip this off Ink Shield. We get 5 2/1 flyers that have all the ETB abilities from our other creatures, and that we can then sacrifice later to have all the death abilities, and they have flying, so they have evasion, so pretty good. Secure the Waste is just a nice little, I look at it as like almost like a laser kind of spell. Like 1 and an X, we just make X 1/1 white warrior creature tokens at instant speed. So it's like, if we just have like a bunch of mana to kill at the end of our turn, or let's say we have like an Ashnod's Altar or whatever, like we can functionally double our tokens, or even just being like, oh yeah, end of your turn, we had open mana, like I'll just pay like 5 mana and get 4 1/1s that are going to have the ETB and drain abilities later. Going into artifacts, we have Arcane Signet because it taps for any color. Ashnod's Altar to sacrifice creature to add 2 mana, 2 colorless mana to the mana pool. Again, that really helps us pay cost. It helps kill our creatures. It gives us mana. It can go absolutely crazy. Lightning Greaves, we're just going to toss it on Zurgo or really any of like the Aristocrat, like the best Aristocrat pieces we have on field, just so that, you know, it's not dying. We're not targeting our creatures with anything. Sacrificing them doesn't target. Oakcatcher's Monument might sound silly, but white creatures cost 1 less to cast. But whenever we cast any creature, regardless if it's like white, red, it doesn't matter, right? We're gonna make a 1/1. So all of our non-token creatures come in with a buddy. Phyrexian Altar sacks a creature for 1 mana of any color. Skull Clamp, since all of our tokens are usually 1/1s, we just pay 1 mana to kill a creature, get all the drain abilities going on, and we draw 2 cards, which is good. Soul Ring is Soul Ring. It taps for 2 colorless. It's great. Hard ramp. Urbrask's Forge, at the beginning of combat on your turn, we put an oil counter on it, and then we're going to make an X one with Trample where X the number of oil counters on it, and then we sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. It's just, we're making a token every turn. Maybe we're making 2 tokens every turn if we have token doublers or whatever. We swing in, they block, cool, we get the death trigger from Zurgo. They take the damage, cool, either way, like that's also fine. Like, it just deals a lot of damage. We're making a token every turn, we're going to kill it every turn. It's a win-win. And then finally, for artifacts, we have all of the talismans, really just to keep us consistent on, you know, mana and ramp, because Mardu doesn't have a ton of ramp. Going into enchantments, we have Bitter Blossom. At the beginning of our upkeep, we make a 1/1, and we lose a life, which with 1/1 with flying, and we lose a life. So, pretty good. We make a token every turn. It's going to come in. It's going to drain each opponent. We can sacrifice it to, let's say, Goblin Bombardment, to have it deal 1 damage to target creature or player, which is really good if we just make a ton of tokens. We can just kill someone. Impact Tremors, whenever a creature enters, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, which is very, very good because, again, we have a lot of creatures entering. Phyrexian Reclamation, I love this card so much. Pay 1 and a black, pay 2 life, return target creature from your graveyard to your hand, right? It's just such short, sweet, to the point recursion. And the nice thing is like, since our deck is so generally low CMC, like we can probably just, like, this is a great end of turn, like end of someone else's turn before our turn ability. Reconnaissance, we can pay a white just for it. It's such a cheap enchantment. Pay 0. Return target attacking creature you control from combat, which is really cool because it works with Zurgo, right? Because Zurgo says, whenever a token dies, if it was attacking, and it dies, we lose a life. But if it dies naturally and it wasn't attacking, we draw a card. And if it dies naturally and it wasn't attacking, we deal 1 damage to each opponent. Reconnaissance just removes that thing from combat, right? So any of the, oh, you have to like attack with all of your creatures, right? Or like tapped and attacking creatures like Adelaine or Caesar or Zurgo or whatever, right? We're just like, nah, 0/0. We're just removing them for combat. We're not doing it. Or we swing out and someone has a block we don't like. We're like, actually, this guy's not in combat. We decided we're not in combat. So even though you blocked it, like our guy's not dead. He's just never in combat, actually. Smothering Tides is great just because we have a good amount of token support. I don't know. I like it. I think it's very good. Meat Hook Massacre is an aristocrat and it's a board wipe. Ideally, like we don't want to, it's awkward, right? Because it's going to wipe off all of our things. But like it's such a good piece. Even if we play it for black, it's not even that bad, but like why would we waste the nuke almost? War Leader's Call to make all of our guys a little bit bigger, and then whenever a creature enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So really good. Lord Effect, it's good. Finally, we have Funeral Home for enchantments. Whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and we gain a life, which is fantastic. And when we use Awakening Hall later, for 8 mana, we return all creature cards from our grave to the field, which again should ideally just win the game. Other enchantments, we have Anointed Procession. Wait, did I did this in such a weird order. I'm going to leave it in the video. I don't care. I don't know why I did it. I guess I got switched around. Anointed Procession. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. Assemble the Legion. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a muster counter on Assemble the Legion, then make a 1/1 white soldier, red and white soldier for each counter on it with haste. So is it great? No. Is it explosive? Yeah. Because, okay, 5 mana, do nothing. We go to our turn. We make a 1/1. We go to our next turn, we make 2 1/1s. Next turn, we make 3 1/1s. So it's kind of like if left unchecked, it can kind of be pretty brutal. Either way, it's good. Bastion of Remembrance, when it enters, we make a 1/1 white human creature token, and then whenever a creature we control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. And then lands, we have all of the shock lands, we have all of the check lands, all of the Vow Hunt lands, whatever you want to call these guys. We have all of the Battle Bond lands. Really, we just want all of our lands to enter untapped. Going into none of those, we have Exotic Orchard. It taps for pretty much 1 mana of any color, because if we're in a 4-player pod and have 3 opponents, the likelihood that one of our opponents are playing black, a combination of black, red, and white is very high, so it's like an untapped duel. Fabled Passage, it's just a quick little thin the deck, get whatever color you need. We're a 3-color deck. Field of the Dead is kind of dumb, right? It's a mistake of a card. And I don't like putting Field of the Dead in decks that don't make sense, but I think it does make sense, right? Because late game, if we're like playing a land, like if we draw a land for turn, like we're still getting value off of it. Like we're still making a 2/2, which is going to trigger all of the whenever a creature enters effects, this happens. And we can sacrifice it for all whenever another creature dies effects, it happens. So if we're like Hellbent and we draw a land, like at least we're getting some value from it. Phyrexian Tower to sack a creature for black, which is good. It's good ramp. And Savai Triome, taps for any color. It's fetchable, not that it really matters in this deck, and we can cycle it later if we don't like it. Westvale Abbey is a capture a colorless. We can pay 5 mana and pay a life to tap it to make a 1/1 white black human cleric. Probably not going to do that too often, but we can pay 5 and tap it and sacrifice 5 creatures to transform it and untap it for a flying lifelink indestructible haste. This kind of ability is like if someone's going to wipe the board, right? Someone's like, yeah, I'm going to destroy all creatures. Be like, oh, well, what we can do is we can sacrifice 5 creatures that are going to die anyways, and at least we get an indestructible dude out of it, which is pretty worthwhile. Going into lands, again, I had to like Photoshop these lands. I did a bad job. 4 plains, 6 swamps, and 5 mountains. It's like 34 lands, which again, we have such a low CMC in this deck, it should be fine, and we still have a decent amount of like artifact ramp. Either way, it should be good enough. Thank you guys for watching. Get the cards you need right from the link down below, and as always, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.